Welcome to A Poor Millionaire with your host, Curtis. And today we're going to go over 10 things you need to know before you buy an FSR, single family rental, or actually really any rental. This could also be duplex, triplex, fourplex, eightplex, could be really anything. But these are the 10 things to make sure you know. All right. Number one, look at everything available and get a feel for the market. Look at every house, and if it's a duplex, look at every duplex, triplex. Actually, look at the surrounding neighborhoods. Understand the market. In order to understand the market, you're going to have to look at 10, 20 houses, easy. This might take a year. It might take 2 years. If you want to do this right, if you want to be safe, if you've got the margin for error. Now, I tell you this from experience because when I bought my first building, it was kind of a fluke. It was in the middle of an area I didn't understand. I did the math and it worked out, and I took a leap and I got lucky. I got real lucky that things weren't crazier, but I knew the math was good enough. So I'm just speaking from experience. If I had to do it all over again and I didn't have a lot of money, what I would have done was I would have looked at houses after houses after houses until I understood what I was looking at, until the deal started to make sense to me, where I could go, okay, I've looked at 10 houses, this is the best one, and then look at 20 more houses and then go, okay, now I know for sure this is the best one. That brings us to number 2, buy close to where you live. All right, I can't emphasize this enough. You do not want to be driving long distances over and over and over and over. Now, this is from a guy who drives long distance to his properties. But here's the thing though, all my properties are located in one area, so I can easily drive. It's a 5-minute drive from each property to each property, and I have all my guys live in that area. My showing manager lives there. My accountant lives there. Everybody lives in that general area of South Dallas where all my properties are located. So I have to drive down. Yes, it's a long drive, but once I'm there, it's easy for me to zip from property to property to property to property without any issues. And preferably, you want to get your houses or your rental property as close to your house as possible so that you have the least amount of travel time whenever you've got to go inspect something. And guys, you're going to always have to inspect something. So buy that property as close as you can get it. So you don't have that nightmare of just the back and forth, which will kill you. That's one more nightmare to knock off your list, and that's what you want to do. You want to make it as easy as possible for you, so to increase the likelihood of success. Number 3 is to do your math, guys. I cannot overemphasize. This is probably the number one thing. And I didn't make that mistake on my first property. On my first property, even though I made all the other mistakes, I didn't know anything about rental market. I didn't own a single family. I bought an eightplex out, paid cash for it. Craziest thing in the world, but it worked out. But I did the math, and I was like, this math, there is no way. And I owned it cash outright. That's the other thing. I had margin of error. There was infinite. The only worst case, I was like, worst case, I'm going to make 10% on my money. Best case, I'm going to make like 40% on my money. I was like, there's no way I can lose here. All right. If everything goes wrong, every possible conceivable thing goes wrong, I'm still going to make money off this property. It's just not as much money as I thought. And I'm not going to lose it. So that's another reason why I could take that huge risk of plopping down the money and just going after it. And I didn't know anything about, I violated all 9 of the other rules. Didn't know nothing. Didn't ask anybody. Did all the other things I mentioned to you. But the one thing I did was I did my math. And the math was so good, I knew I couldn't fail. I knew I could figure out the rest. And then I just jumped in. So number 3 is probably one of the most important. The math has to be correct. It really should be number 1. I should redo these and put number 1 is the math, because making money is obviously the goal. So knowing the math is absolutely essential. You have to know how much money you're making. What is the worst case scenario? What is the best? At what area am I going to start losing money? If the rent goes down too much, am I going to start losing money? If the rent goes up, how much more money am I going to make? I know everything, all the math. All right. Also, try to understand. You got to schedule. Hey, this house might be empty 2 months a year. Worst case scenario, right? And best case scenario, it's full every single month. What is the difference between those two? How much am I going to be back? Plus, what are the market rents? What's the highest market rent in the area versus the lowest market rent in the area versus the property am I buying? How much it looks. All right, next thing, got to have cash flow. Obviously, my math always includes cash flow. I would never buy anything without cash flow. Guys, you cannot buy, I can't even conceive of a situation where you would buy something without cash flow. Cash flow is like your margin of error, all right? Number one, it's your margin of error. Number two, cash flow solves problems because when you've got cash flow, that can fix little issues like plumbing. That can fix like when your renter moves out too early in the middle of a lease and you go a month or two without renting it out. Cash flow is what solves these little issues. And cash flow makes it all worthwhile because then when you got this house rented, it's bringing you money and you're happy because you're getting those checks, right? And you got a little extra left over. Hopefully a lot extra. On all my buildings, I try to make a lot of cash flow, all right? Cash flow is king. My entire rental business, I live off my rental business. So obviously without cash flow, I starve to death, right? Plus, also, taxes are going to go up every year. So if you don't have cash flow and the taxes go up, but the rent stays the same, you're going to be hurting. You're going to be paying that extra. I had a house that the taxes doubled last year, and I didn't get in time to go to the office and say, hey, this is the crappiest house on the neighborhood. I know every other house here is a mansion, but this one is not so good looking. But obviously, I'm going to figure out situations. I'll probably flip that house. I'll probably put a bunch of money into it and it's time to get rid of it because that's the thing is the math is getting sideways on me because that area. Next thing, buy a fixer-upper, guys. Buy a house. You got to look at all the houses because if you're buying at full retail value, it's going to be full retail value. If you're paying full retail value on real estate, you're what they call either A, you're a person that plans on living there, or B, you're a sucker. All right, there's really no other one between that because why would you pay full price on a piece of real estate, especially if you're not going to live there? Reason why people pay full price on real estate is because they're planning on moving in tomorrow. As soon as they close on that house, they're moving in, right? I mean, they got the truck literally shows up and they're moving furniture off literally the day they get keys. In most cases. Obviously, there are the exceptions, but you get the general idea. If you're paying retail, there's a reason why you're paying retail. You're paying retail for convenience. All right, what you want is a house that somebody left and just left it a shambles because there's so much more money in that, and you want to look for those deals. And that's the other thing. When you see a house, you see two houses that are identical. One of them's retail and it's fixed and ready to go, and you could put the keys in and you can move in tomorrow. And you got another house, but they price them at the same. And you go to the seller, and you go, look, this house is retail. I can buy it for $150. Your house is $150, and your house is not ready to go. It needs new carpet, needs new paint, needs new countertops, needs all this stuff. There's at least $30,000 worth of stuff that I've got to fix. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you $110 for it. And what's going to happen is every once in a while, they're going to say yes. All right. And when they say yes, then bam, you got a good deal because you looked at all the other houses. You know, every house is worth $150. You know, that house, once it gets back up to 100%, it's worth $150. If you can figure out how to do a lot of that work yourself, contract it yourself, you do a fixer-upper, you can get instant equity. You can put like 20 grand in and get 20, or you can get extra money left over. If you buy it for 110, put 20 in it, now you're in it for 130, but the house is worth 150. And if you do it right, you might even get that house value up to 160 because everything's brand new. Because you put in brand new countertops, you did paint, you did carpet, you've done everything. But I don't like flipping houses. The reason why I don't like flipping houses is because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of months. And then plus there's so many people trying to flip them. What I like to do is buy them and rent them. Buy, hold, and rent because you get that every single year. You're getting that inflation, and the rent market's always going up. So you're always making more money every year. It's like a bonus when you're renting a house. That's why I love to buy and hold and rent. All right, next thing. Get good advice. Now, good advice is hard to find, especially with people who don't know what they're doing, have never done it before. Good advice would be watch a ton of YouTubes. Watch my YouTube, watch somebody else's YouTube, get all the information you can, and also ask everybody involved in the process. Ask the real estate agent. And also check with multiple real estate agents. Say, hey, what do you think of a house? I'm looking for a house to rent. What do you think I should do? And they're going to come up with some great ideas. Some of them will come up with extremely stupid ideas, and you'll be like, you're out of your mind. Go away now, right? Go away now, right? And then you've got the other ones. Now, I had a great real estate agent, and this guy brought me specific deals based on exactly what he knew I would take. He's like, this guy doesn't care what condition they're in at all. He's looking at two things, price and financing. That's it. Give the price, you get the financing, and you've got a deal, right? And he's like, I'll bring him a dump. And it doesn't matter. I didn't care what it looks like. I should add that on to number 11. Don't fall in love with properties. But see, here's the thing. It's like I fell in love with every single property. But at the same time, though, I didn't have to have it, right? I loved all real estate. I loved looking at it. I was like, every house I looked at, I wanted to buy, right? But only for the right price. I didn't find one house and go, I love this one so much more. I'm willing to pay more money for it. Hell no. I walk away from that in a heartbeat. So don't fall in love with it. But if you fall in love with it, fall in love with all of them. And then just put out those low bids. And then remember, fall in love with a good deal, not just anything, right? All right, next one. Know your renter. Knowing your renter is knowing your market, guys. If you're in super low income, which is what I do, your renter's not going to pass a credit check. I am like the very bottom. The neighborhoods that I rent in is the absolute very bottom. And here's what's happening in my neighborhood, though. That's the thing, is you got to know the market and know what the market's doing. My neighborhood on all my houses is going up. And in some senses, that's amazing, like, because the value of my houses are going up, which is awesome, because that means every year I get a little richer than the year I was before, right? Which is great. You're like, hey, free money, right? I'm like, but here's the problem. I have to upgrade those houses. I've already started the process, because here's the deal. They're taking houses in the same neighborhood, and now they're putting in granite countertops. Now they're putting in ceramic tiles. Now they're putting in all these fancy stuff, putting on porches, putting paved driveway, paved where you could drive your car into the driveway, right? Instead of a dirt, right? They're doing all the fancy. They're putting up the nice brand new fancy fences, right? Well, property values are going up. Guess what tax values are? They're going up, which is killing me because the taxes are going up and the rent's not going up as fast as the taxes. I mean, I'm still getting the rent still going up, but at the same time, though, it's like, man, I wish that the value would stay down and the rent would keep going, right? But I have to, in order to keep up with the normal neighborhood, I got to start bringing the value of my houses up, which isn't like a big deal, but at the same time, though, it's just one more thing you have to do. Whereas normally I had it all set. I do peel and stick on my floors. I didn't do ceramic. I said, hey, I told my guys, I said, when you go to the Home Depot store, you buy the cheapest thing they have for the faucet, cheapest thing they have for this. Now we do the next cheapest thing they have. I was like, I want all metal faucets, no plastic. And also we're doing ceramic tile, cheapest ceramic tile you can get, and ceramic tile everything. I was like, bathrooms, kitchens, hallways. And I said, hey, don't hire anyone unless they can do ceramic tile, or because we're not doing anything but tile everywhere. Which I've just had to tile 30 houses. Let me tell you, that's a lot of money when you're tiling tile in house after house after house after house. Obviously, I wait for them to come empty and then I tile them. It's just, my guys just nonstop tiling. It's all they ever do. All right. Good advice, guys. You got to get it anywhere you can find it. Find it on YouTube. Ask everybody's opinion. But don't take everybody's opinion as wisdom, right? Even when you're watching YouTubers and you're watching a YouTuber, it's like you got to have to, does this guy actually own property? How many properties does he own? I own 50 units, right? I have 3 or 4 buildings, and I have like 30 houses, and I have 3 or 4 duplexes. I have a massive amount of properties that I own, right? And I own most of them outright, completely. I own them 100%, right? I know what I'm talking about when it comes to buying properties and renting them out to low income. Now, if you're talking high end, if you're trying to rent a house for $4,000 a month, I'm not the guy to talk to. You need to go talk to somebody else, right? One of those guys in California, and they're driving around their California convertibles and they're renting those houses for $5,000, $6,000. They're getting first, last, and second, and damage deposit and all this money, right? That's a whole different thing. I'm low income, right? The lowest income, basically. And people are gonna cringe when they hear this, which is the next thing. Sometimes we do, but for the most part, we do not do background checks, right? Because it's low income. And this hurts us sometimes. Sometimes we get a bad renter in, and then they go right back out. But the problem is when you get into the lowest level of renters, you run into the problem of those guys. They have bad credit, period. So you're not going to be able to do it. Now, obviously, the higher you go up on that scale, away from where I'm at now, like I said, the value of these houses is going up. So I am about to cross that threshold where I have to start asking for credit, right? But here's the thing, though. It's like there are people renting houses in the same neighborhood that are almost brand new for $100 less than me, right? And I'm renting it for $100 more, and it's a crappier house. Well, why is that? Because the guy who's renting this house is basically a police officer or an accountant or somebody who has perfect, flawless credit, and that's the only way they can get in there. None of my renters can get in there. So they're paying me $100 more for a crappier house, right? So, I mean, think about that. That's just one thing you have to figure out the market. In a low-income neighborhood, you might be able to get away with a little bit more rent by not actually doing a credit check, right? Or a background check. That's just something I've noticed is a lot of houses in the neighborhood, they're $100 cheaper, damn near brand new, but they stay. That's the other thing. It takes them like 3 to 4 months to rent that house because they're looking for a perfect creditor. Obviously, once they rent it, though, that person stays for a good solid year or two, right? Whereas mine, sometimes they cash out after 6 months or 3 months, cash out by taking off in the middle of the lease. Anyway, guys, get good advice. Know your renters. Know the market you're in. I just described the absolute lowest market. Now, guys, be very careful. Don't do it exactly how I do. Learn, figure out what other people in the market are doing. Figure out what area you're in. Every area is different. Everything is different. Some areas you're going to need to do a criminal background. Some areas you can't do a criminal background. And also know the local laws on that because they are weird. And the federal laws are weird too. Sometimes I've had to work in between laws because federal law says one thing and local law says a different thing. So you never know. Know the eviction process is number 8. Guys, the eviction process in your state is going to be completely different in every single state. And it is, in some states like California, it's a nightmare to get people out. It's like they literally have to pay people to leave. These people owe rent and they're giving them money to move out. That's insane. I live in Texas, which is amazing on getting a person out. 99 times out of 100, we don't have any problems getting them out within 1 month of them not. They're still, though, that entire month, they're not paying rent. So I go completely 1 month without rent, but I can get them out within 30 days. Pretty solid, and get somebody else in as fast as humanly possible to get that house rented. But you need to know how the local thing, you need to ask some other landlords. Somebody owns a rental property who's done an eviction and say, how long does it take to get a renter out? Because that's very important. And then also learn the local laws so you don't violate them, because in order to evict someone, you have to follow the law exactly. If you don't follow the law exactly, you evict someone, you go into eviction court, the eviction will get thrown out automatically. So it's a very strict process. I'll give you one example so you understand what I'm saying. We have to give a pay or get out after 3 days, and then we have to wait 6 days. I'm just throwing numbers here. Some of these are not on the money, but I'm just saying we have to give the renter a pay or get out. And then we have to take that pay or get out to court. And if we don't hand the judge and say, yes, we gave them a pay or get out, here it is, then the judge is going to throw it out. He's going to say, where's the pay or get out? And he's going to ask the tenant, did you get the pay or get out? Now, if you've got one and the tenant says, no, I didn't get one, then the judge is going to go with you that you have one. But if you don't have one in court and the tenant says, I didn't get one, well, guess what? It gets thrown out. You gotta learn the process and local laws. Best way to do that is ask an existing landlord and also look it up. Look up the courts. Look up what you're gonna have to file, how much it costs, what the writ process. The writ is the second part of an eviction process in Texas. Everybody calls things differently, so it could be anything. In Texas, you get your eviction. Then you get your writ. Writ is actually where you get the constable to come by and actually put their stuff set out. That's the other thing. What's the set out process? I've seen certain states where you have to actually pay the state for their guys to come in and to take them out. In Texas, they let me do my guys. So I show up with 4 guys and we have the house emptied out within, we can do an entire house in 2 hours or less. Really, sometimes we've gotten them out in an hour. Just depends. Guys, you got to know the eviction process so you know what you're into. That also helps you when you're making your lease. Make sure you got your lease. Make sure you get the standard lease for the state that you're in. Make sure you've read every single line on that lease. All right, so you understand, and make sure that you understand each line and what it means, because that stuff's going to be important when you go to have to fight them in court. And like your state in California, I wouldn't even buy real estate in California. That's just my opinion. I mean, obviously you make a lot of money, but at the same time though, it's like, I'm not real big on people staying for 6 months, not paying their rent, and dealing with court systems that just work against you. All right, but guess what? The funny part of that is people end up. Here's the problem. Why are people homeless in California? They're homeless in California because it takes 6 months to get them out. So guess what? If I was a landlord in California, I would want a blood sample. I would want a semen sample. I would want to know every single thing about you. I would want a blood sample from your wife and your kids. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, your credit score would have to be perfect. I want your rental history. I'd call your extra landlords. I would be doing a complete background and a criminal background. And if you failed any part of that, I wouldn't rent to you. That's why homelessness in California is through the roof, is because it's so hard to evict people. So obviously, the only thing that's available is the nice places, because the nice places is the only thing that people with good credit want to rent. So therefore, all the low-income guys like me are out of business, or we have to move to the next level because we have no choice. If I can only rent to people who have credit scores higher than 700, well, my houses have got to look beautiful, and I've got to charge more for it. And basically, it's like everyone else. Well, I'm sorry, you had one eviction in 73. See ya, right? They're out of luck. Brings me to the tenant screening. We just talked about it. Number 9 is tenant screening, and obviously, know your laws, and then know what you need, where you are on that spectrum. How much are you a California, and you got to make absolutely sure that you know everything about this. You need to call 6 references and get a blood sample and check their criminal history, their credit score of that. Also, remember, here's the tricky thing. They love to do this to me too. All right, in California, what they'll do is the husband will have his credit, or the wife will get it under her name, and she'll be like, I'm the only person renting here. Then the husband moves in. The husband has crappy credit. All right, so really, you got to get a credit score and run the background on both of them, right? And what they like to do to me is they'll do this. One of the other problems I run into is because the city will come in and say, okay, this house is a problem. They're selling drugs here. You have to do a background check on every single person who rents this house or apartment or duplex or whatever. And I'm like, sure, no problem. Let's do it, right? I'm like, I'll do whatever you guys tell me to do, right? So obviously, when the city tells you to do something, do it to the best of your ability, right? Obviously, without violating the federal laws, because that's always fun, right? When they tell you one thing and the feds are telling you a different thing, but that's a whole nother story. Don't even get me started, right? All right, so back to what I was saying. On tenant screening, a lady will come up, she'll rent the apartment, she'll pay the money, right? And then come pay rent day, or day for the next month for the rent to get paid, is some other guy paying the rent. And you're like, and this guy's like, he's walking in, and he's like, oh, what's up? Here's my rent. And I'm like, who, we're like, who are you? And like, oh, I live in the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we rented that to a nice lady. Where is she? She's at home, right? And we never see that lady again. What happened? Well, what happened was someone with good credit, an aunt or an uncle or sister or girlfriend, somebody rented that house for that guy, and guess what? That guy moves in, and guess what? He's selling drugs. And guess what? Now you're like, well, I'm pretty sure that guy's selling drugs, but I don't have proof. If I go try to evict him, what happens when I go to an eviction judge? Eviction judge is going to say, do you have proof? And I'm going to say, no, I don't have proof. I didn't arrest him, and I didn't search his house, and I don't have pictures of his drugs, right? I just know by looking at him and watching his behavior, this guy, and on top of that, the excess of traffic of people going inside and out of the house, and also the cameras, and how they start setting up cameras, and they start putting little gates on the doors with little holes, and you're like, okay, it's clearly a drug house, right? And but you don't have proof. And then I asked the city, hey, will you guys go bust these guys? Literally, I've seen guys selling drugs. Cops are right there, and I'm like, hey, those guys over there are clearly selling drugs right here. And then the cops will just stand around and do nothing. Obviously, I nothing against Dallas Police Department. They're great guys. A lot of them work really, really hard. I know sometimes when you're on a job and you've been working 16 hours, obviously, you're like, hey, I just can't arrest any more people today, right? So maybe that's where they're at. So I don't begrudge anyone, but I'm just telling you the situation where when you do a screening tech, you're going to have to be very careful. You're going to have to understand how the games that people are going to play. All right, brings me to the last one. Last one is you've got to have cash on hand to cover your butt when things go south. How are things going to go south? Well, obviously, if a tenant stops paying rent and you got to evict them, well, you're going to have to pay for the eviction cost. You're going to have to pay for the mortgage. You're going to have to pay for the taxes. And you're going to have to cover that house until you can get that tenant out. That's why I told you, you need to know the local laws of the state that you're in so that you know what's going to happen when that eviction comes. All right? So you got to have money to make sure you can cover the rent until that person is out and you can get a new person in. Plus, what happens if that person gets mad at you, even though you evicted them because they didn't pay? I've had this happen. Someone won't pay me rent. I'll get them evicted. They'll get mad at me and they'll go do some damage to the house. And then I've got to come in. I've got to pay to get that house fixed. So not only, and then on top of that, not only do I have to pay to get the house fixed, I got to pay for obviously the cost of the house being empty. I still have to pay the taxes. So it could go into 2 months that I'm not getting rent, and I got to do a renovation because I'm fixing the house the guy messed up, right? So you have to have money to cover that. Now, obviously, I have money. I build in margin. I had huge margins, and I build in a lot of buffer. So I've got money and I have a full crew, and those guys they know what they're doing. They come in, they fix everything, no problem. It's not a big deal, right? It's really hard for anybody to do something that they can't fix relatively fast. All right, but if you're buying a house first time, you run into these problems. It could get really scary for you. So you've got to have extra money. You need to have a buffer, the biggest buffer you can get. Don't spend every dime on your house, and then you've got nothing left over. Your cash flow's $100, and you're just barely making your expenses, and you're just barely making your mortgage. You're barely making your car payment. You're barely making your food, and then you're barely making. I mean, don't just barely make it. All right, you need to have your emergency fund. Go back to the emergency fund. You need to have money set aside so you can pay your bills, and money, that's one thing, and then money set aside so you can pay that house in case it has to go empty for however long you think that it would cost you for an eviction and a renovation. All right, because that's your worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, you're going to have an eviction, depending upon your state. Some states it might be 2 months to get somebody out. Some states it might be 1 month to get somebody out, which is Texas. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. All right, and if you're in California, it could get really crazy, right? And I don't know, maybe they can get it down if you pay them money or something, or beg them, or you get lucky. But obviously, California, credit check, blood sample, everything, right? Everything. And for everybody in the house. The kid, your 2-year-old, I need a credit check for them, all right? I don't know. I'm looking at him. He looks like he's got an eviction on his record. Anyway, guys, you understand what I'm saying. Check everything. Man, my videos are long no matter what I do. I thought this was going to be 10 minutes. I'm already pushing like 30. All right, guys, I really appreciate it. Number 1, give me a thumbs up. Number 2, subscribe to my Instagram. It's probably one of these things over here. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. If you've watched this entire video, and obviously you've gotten some value out of it, I guarantee you, so no reason not to subscribe. Right now, press the red button. This is a red shirt, so I'm acting like this is the button. So smash the subscribe, press the like, subscribe to my Instagram, and guys, I will see. Oh, you know what? Let's go over them last one more time. Seeing as how this video is already like a half hour long. Look into every single house that you're gonna buy. Look at as many houses as you possibly can. And if you're thinking about, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house next year. Well, start looking this year, right? Don't wait till next year to start looking at houses. And also, when you look at houses, sometimes you're going to come across a deal. Maybe you might run into some owner finances. You might find the deal of a lifetime quicker than you thought, for cheaper than you thought, and the bank might give you more money. So start looking today, guys. Start looking today. Figure out what you're going to buy and start looking immediately, today. Tomorrow, actually right now, get online on Zillow, start looking at houses, start figuring out the neighborhood, start doing the math, and start working on it. Even if you're 3 years away, 4 years away, I don't care if you're working at Subway right now, guys. Start looking at real estate so you know what you're talking about when it comes time when you get that first house and you're ready to rock and roll. Buy close as close as you possibly can, right? Buy your first piece of real estate as close to you as humanly possible. Do your math. Guys, the math is got to be good, all right? And you've got to do it. And also, you need to make sure your math is right. It's like sometimes I'm doing math on stuff, and I'm like, And it gets confusing because you're like, okay, I'm putting in 300, I'm taking out 1,000, all this advanced math, and the harder things get, and you add financing, you add interest, you add principal, you're adding up all, and remember what your rate of return is. Your rate of return is going to be your cash flow minus whatever you think is going to be your buffer for empties and taxes and all the other stuff. That's going to be your cash flow. Plus, it's going to be if you have a mortgage, then it's going to be what you're paying down the principal. Plus those two. Plus, it's going to be whatever that house goes up in value each year. So you can add those things together, and hopefully you're making a good solid, 10, 15, 20%. You get lucky, right? All right. And obviously buy below so you can get the higher. All right, make sure your cash flow. I just mentioned that. No cash flow, don't buy it. Don't just, guys, like, it's not even in my vocabulary. I mean, maybe some guy out there, if you know how to buy a property with no cash flow and make it work, please do a video and link me at the bottom or tell me at the bottom in the comments on how to make that situation work, because you're just you're crazier than I am, all right? Buy a fixer-upper. Guys, that's the way you always start. Buy a fixer-upper, period. Get good advice. Get advice from everybody, and then weed through go through it and pick out the best advice. Watch more than one YouTuber, all right? But obviously come back and watch this video and all the rest of mine, because I guarantee you I got some good. If you're looking for low income, good advice and motivation, and somebody crazy, watch my YouTube and put me on your list of subscriptions. Go from there. Know your renter. Know your market, guys. Know who's renting from you. Know if it's low income, high income, lowest of the income. Where you know your tenant. Know the eviction process, guys. You got to know what the eviction process for your state is before you buy anything where you are. Also, you could be living over state lines, so you could have houses in 2 different states. You're gonna have to know each state how it works. All right, you just can't have it any other way. Screen tenants. It depends, right? How much do you need to screen a tenant? California, screen the crap out of them, right? Texas, you can screen them a little. It depends upon the house, how expensive the house is and what area it is, right? Have cash laying around, right? That's always key. Have your emergency funds so you can pay your bills in case you lose your job. Have emergency funds for the house or rental house that you're going to plan on purchasing, so that in case something happens there. So you've got 2 situations that could happen. Be prepared for lose your job. Be prepared to lose your renter. All right? Think about it. You lost both right now. Would you have enough money to survive until you can find a job, until you can find a new renter, right? Guys, I appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.